Oslo, Helsinki, and Copenhagen. So that was a small introduction. If you want to know more about WeWork, I'll be here tonight, just on the side. You can come and ask me anything you like. A few things that I want you to know also in case of emergency, hopefully not. There are emergency exits here. So you just go through the speaker, down the escalator, or just straight to the left. And there's another escalator at the US Government 25. Just good for you to know. There are bathrooms here, and a lot of good snack and beer. So now I'm going to introduce you to this evening's host, which is Flutter Sweden, and Viktor. And I hope you'll enjoy tonight. Thank you.
Welcome to Flutter Sweden. We started this a week ago, so it's really amazing to see so many of you here. Quite overwhelming. Not sure if anyone would come, but yeah, we filled out the first event space we had booked in like a day, and we tried a couple more seats. So thank you all for coming. We're really excited to have you here. My name is Viktor. I used to work at Google at the Flutter team, but I went back to Sweden 3 years ago, and now I'm running my own.
Hello. Thanks. Great to see so many people here. We weren't sure how many that would show up actually, so I hope the snack lasts at least 5 minutes more. I'm Fredrik. I work at Redmine. We're a software studio placed in the other building here at WeWork. There's a building at Scotland as well. We do consultancy, regular consultancy. We do in-house projects, mostly app and web projects right now, and we also do early stage investment. So if you want to talk about anything regarding that, just pop by and chat. We have some Redmine people here as well, behind the counter. Say hello to everyone. So if you have any questions about us, just come by, and welcome again.
So I thought I would start by showing off our app with Flutter, that is Newsvoice. So I started this 2 years ago, and today we have about 30,000 readers, mostly in the US. Newsvoice is a completely new way of reading news. We all create the content together, so that does all the heavy lifting by scanning thousands of sites and categorizing the content. It's up to the readers to decide what's actually important. In addition, Newsvoice will always show you different perspectives on the news. So in this example, we see like a left and right wing perspective. Let's say we read about the conflict in Syria, we can show a perspective from the US, Russia, Middle East. So whenever I try to pitch Newsvoice to investors or to journalists or whoever it is, all they ask is, what was it like working at Google? so I thought I would start by getting that out of the way quickly. First and foremost, working at Google makes you cool, like really cool. And you get to work with like equally cool people. So you get to work with a guy who bikes all the way to work through the whole of San Francisco every morning on his unicycle. And you get to work with a guy who built so many model trains in his house, so he had to take out his fridge to fit them all. True story. And well, this didn't quite fly with his new girlfriend, so he had to like, actually cut down a bit on the trains and go buy a fridge. And that's crazy. Who would do that to their boyfriend? All right, but I'm not going to talk that much about myself. We're here to talk about Flutter and Dart. I want to start by checking with you, how many of you have tried Flutter? It's quite a few, so there's still about like a third that hasn't tried it, so this may be quite basic, but I'm going to maybe mention a little bit about the history of Flutter and how it has started too. And Dart is, for you that don't know, the language that you write your Flutter code in, or Flutter is written in. So what is Flutter? Flutter is Google's new framework for building apps, and it's actually very high performance because all the code is native in the app. If you compare to many other frameworks, so you're using JavaScript and such. And you can build for both iOS and Android with a single code base, which is great, and it has really fast iterations with their upload feature, for example. So we will give a little demo later on. And Dart, if you have coded anything like JavaScript, C++, Java, or C#, it's instantly familiar. It's literally it took me like 1 or 2 days to get started with Dart as a C, Objective-C developer. And it's very fast, compiles to native code, but it also has a virtual machine runtime, which can be super useful if you run it on server side. And it has compiled to JavaScript for browsers, and that's actually where Dart started out. It was meant to be a replacement for JavaScript. And it's also statically typed, which means it has great tooling support, so you get all the code completions right, so it's actually pretty nice that way. And it has quite a bit of syntactic sugar, which is like shortcuts. I'm going to show some of them in the coding demo. And it has something called a generational garbage collect, which means in Dart it's very, very cheap to take a lot of objects, which is great for Flutter, because in Flutter you will inevitably create lots and lots of objects, but it's virtually free to create these objects compared to many other languages where it's expensive to allocate memory. So something that's really cool with Flutter is that you can use the same code base and you get an app that is, feels native on those platforms. So you can see you have the same app, but it has subtle differences. So the scrolling will be different, the icons are slightly different. But Flutter is actually not limited to just iOS and Android. You can build it on Mac, Windows. They have a demo for the web. Someone is actually working on a Raspberry Pi, and pretty much you can run Flutter anywhere where you can run C++ and Bukenya. Next I want to talk a little bit about the sort of structure or architecture of Flutter. At the end you have the engine part, which is basically written in C++. And for most part, most developers will never have to touch that, but it's all open source, so you can if you really want to. The engine uses a framework called Skia, which is the rendering engine of Google Chrome. Originally, that's what it was written from. So it has like great text rendering, layouting, and all that stuff. And Skia also have a bunch of different backends. It's a sort of high-level graphics language, graphics layer, or sort of semi-high level. You can draw vector graphics or text or anything like that. And it has backends for, you can do CPU rendering or OpenGL. Falcon is the Android faster version of OpenGL, I guess. And I've seen they're working on that to support also. You can actually use it already if you use some special flags when you're compiling the engine. But we don't have to worry that much about the engine for that, so the part that just works. So on top of the engine you have the foundation, which is a little bit like a DOM tree in HTML. And on top of that you have your widgets. And that's where you will do most of your coding. You create widgets and you build a tree of widgets, which becomes your views in your app. And they're basically different kinds of, you have like multi-view widgets, which are so have that Android look and feel, and then there's a library with Bukenya widgets, which gives you the iOS feel. And I know when they did the scroll views, they actually overlaid the native views on top of the Flutter view to make sure they were like perfectly the same. So it's been a lot of work making it as perfect as possible there. Okay. So some of the core principles of Flutter is that everything you write is a widget. And that includes structural elements like buttons or text views or anything you see. Also, you can use a widget for styling things, so you can put a styling widget on top of the button to make it have a different style, for instance. Or you also use it for layouts, and this can be paddings or tables, things like that. And another core principle is that the preference in Flutter is to use composition over inheritance. That means that when you build a new widget, you don't like inherit another widget. Instead, you compose a new widget from a set of other widgets. So you basically take a box, you take text, and I'm going to give a little bit of an example of that. And the idea in Flutter is that you can, whenever you change the state of the app, you will rebuild your whole widget tree. And Flutter is fast enough so you can do this every single frame in your app. Like the whole app, you can pretty much rebuild every frame. And it's fast enough. But that's probably not the smartest way to do it, because of course it will take a lot of CPU and battery in the phone. So you should typically just rebuild the things whenever your state changes. All right. Yes. For widgets, you have two types of widgets. It's stateless widgets and stateful widgets. So stateless widgets are things that are pretty much just static. They can be just the text that you display. And stateful widgets is when it has a state. So, but from the outside, both these kind of look the same. So whenever you use a widget, you don't really have to care about this is like stateful or stateless. So the state can be if it's a scroll view, for instance, like how much is it scrolled, or if you do an animation. So for instance, the checkbox in Flutter, like the default checkbox, is a stateful widget. It doesn't actually hold the state of like, is it on or off? Because that you specify when you build it. So you build the button as it's in its on state or in its off state, but it has the like animation is the state when it like transitions between being checked or not. Okay, I'm going to give a short coding demo. This can be interesting with the microphone. I'm not exactly sure I'm going to solve this. Okay, I'm going to do right-hand coding. Anyway, this is maybe the simplest app you can build. So up here you have, you create the app and run it. And in Dart, you don't have to use like a new keyword or anything. You can just use the name of the class to create a new object. And the app is a stateless widget. And every stateless widget has a build method. So this is the build method, which returns a tree of widgets. So in this case, it's a material app, and that has a homepage. And my homepage is another stateless widget, which is a scaffold, which is typically the top widget you will have. It can contain an app bar or notifications and things like that. And we just put a center widget, which will center whatever. It's a layouting widget, and the text. So this shows the sort of hello world example. So I'm going to start by just adding an app bar here, just as an example. And the app bar probably wants to have a title, and we're going to use a text widget for the title. So you can call that, oops, my app. And when I say this, you can see how it instantly updates the app as it's running. We probably don't just want to have the hello world text because that's not a real app. We're going to instead add a list view here. And the list view is basically a vertical list of widgets that you can scroll. So there's a very common component in apps, obviously. And it has a number of children. So we're going to just add a list tile. And it's going to have a title, which is text. item 1. So that gives us a scrollable list view here with a first item. So we can add another one, just another list tile to our list. Call that item 2, and there it is. Let's do something a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to add a button here, and we can use a material button. It's called, there's a couple of different buttons you can get started with. So the Flutter, I was going to use the erase button. And there you can see it has already pre-filled what's going to happen when we press the button. So we're going to add a closure here. And closures in Dart are actually pretty simple to write. So you just declare it as you would a function, but without its name. And we can add a print statement here. So we can see what happens when I press the button. And we're going to add a title. So now I have the button here, and then when I press it, you can see down here that the button is pressed. So that's how you add new widgets, and you typically use closures. I can also pass in a function here. But maybe we would rather have our own look for the buttons. So let's build our own button. So I'm going to make a class that I just call my button. And we're going to make this a stateless widget. And what we need in our stateless widget is a build method. And this is going to return a tree of widgets. It's hard to use the shift key with one hand. Anyway, so I'm going to use my cheat sheet here. To make, I want to do this with like an ink splash. And for the ink splashes to work, we will need to have a material that are behind it. So we're going to add a material that's also a widget, obviously. Everything is widgets. So create a material, and it's going to have a child that is an inkwell. And that's what actually creates an ink splash. And we can make this, set this to a color. So let's make that blue, perhaps. That's a nice button color. Colors. Blue, all right. And the inkwell has it can react to different types of touches. So we're just going to add a tap. But here we need to pass in a method. And we probably don't want the button to make like the same thing. We want to be able to reuse the button. So we're going to make a method or a callback. And that will be a void callback that doesn't return anything. And we can call that onPressed. And it's actually going to be a final. So you declare something final when you can only change it once. And we probably also want to be able to define the text of the button. So we're going to add a widget for that. This can actually be an icon or whatever, or even a scroll view inside the button, no problem. So we're calling that a child. And then we're going to use a little bit of that syntactic sugar here. So you have my button, and we're going to give it a number of arguments that are named. And we're going to use this child here. This means that when I call the child, set a child parameter, that will be automatically assigned to this variable. So this is like a shortcut instead of writing this whole method. So there, and then we can just add an onPressed here and pass in that method, and let's make a child that we call child. So that will pass in the widget, that whatever that is, into the child here when we build a tree. So let's try it out. Instead of raise button, we're going to replace this with my button. And there it is. It's a blue button. But maybe that doesn't look so good. We probably want to have a little bit more of padding. So we're going to add one of these layouting widgets called padding. And we're going to add an inset of, say, 16 pixels. And we can just pass in the child here instead. And now we have a button that looks the way we want it, perhaps. Next, I just wanted to show quickly, we probably don't just want to use a print, we probably want to do something whenever the button is pressed, and this is where the state come in. So we're going to add a state, we're going to transform this homepage widget to a stateful widget. So we're going to change this here. And for a stateful widget to work, we actually need a state. So this will be my homepage state. That is a state, and it's a state of oops. My homepage. And when we need to actually create this state, and here comes another of these syntactic sugars. So instead of let's see, let's copy this. Instead of doing this whole create state method, we can just use the shortcut, which is the arrow operator, which does the same thing. It's just a little bit easier to read and shorter code. All right, so we have a stateful widget. It probably needs a state. So this can be, for instance, an integer that we call a counter. And now when I reload it, it will probably break because the hot reload doesn't always work, especially if you change the state a lot or switch between stateless and stateful widgets. So this is when we have to reload the whole app, but that's also pretty fast. So let's do something with the counter whenever, we can start by actually printing that out here. So we're going to say count and use the counter. And we save that, and you can see we have the count 0 here. And whenever I press the button, instead of just printing button pressed, we're going to increase the counter. But we also need to indicate that we actually change the state when we do that. So we use the setState method, and here we can set, say, the counter. We're going to add 1 to the counter. So whenever I press the button, you up the count in the state. So that's sort of the core principles. From here you just add more widgets and more states. So that was sort of the demo I wanted to give you today on Flutter, and I hope that can give you an idea of how to get started. And there's also a lot of great courses if you go to Flutter Dev. Next, let's see. We have 2 people who are going to show the apps they have been working on. So they have 10 minutes each. And the first is Charles, who's going to show his medical ID app built with Flutter, and a little bit of how he's built it. Do you want to come up?
Hello. Hi, I'm Charles, Bukenya. I'm a software engineer at Pocket Mobile Communications slash, which is a subsidiary of Trimble Corporation. Yeah, I'm going to talk about a little bit our experience with Flutter. The app I'm going to talk to you about is called Health ID. It's not for this organization that I'm working for, but I'm also involved in a startup which is called Health ID Life Science AB. They're trying to create an app that gives users access to their health diagnostics by their AI model. It's not released, so it's kind of a sneak peek. So what it is, yeah, I've said that already. Health ID is a mobile application developed to act as a front end to an AI medical diagnostics platform for giving users access to their medical diagnostics. And the owner is called Health ID Life Science AB. So these are just some screen grabs from the application built entirely with Flutter. So you can see that you can really build a beautiful, complex UI with Flutter very easily. Why we chose Flutter is an iteration. At first, we didn't choose Flutter because we thought that we want to use this platform for application. We just chose it to do some iteration because we wanted to have some mockups for Android and iOS. But what we realized that it was just too awesome. So we were iterating very, very, very fast. And so we decided that we need to go forward with this. And also because it's multi-platform, you can build an Android and iOS application at the same time, same code base. So that was really, really nice. Minimal setup. To get started, I mean, it's really, really faster. Being a native Android developer, I know the setup that is required for you to get running. When you install Android Studio, you need to install the SDK and what, blah, blah, blah. So the setup, the tools that you need to have all in place, it's really not comparable to Flutter. It's so fast. And of course, cost. When you have the same code base for multi-platform, you are saving costs. And also performance, as he said, it's really, really, really performant. The main drawback for other cross-platform frameworks that have been in existence, like React or Xamarin, is that the performance gets really a hit because you have to do these transformations of JavaScript, but they're using the Skia rendering engine, so it's really performant. It can support all the refresh rates that your device supports, so it really performs well. And another thing that I realized, it has very easy localization. If you have been an app developer, you know what it takes to translate your application. It's so tedious to set up translations for your application. With Flutter, it is so easy. I did a translation for this application just using 2 classes and using JSON files as language translations. So it's really, really easy to localize your app if you are interested in having your application in multiple languages. You can see our code here. So this is our language files. We have it in English and JSON, and the only classes that really deal with the localization is this one, the main application, where you register your localization delegates and do some minimal setup. And okay, so these are the only 2 classes really that are doing all the stuff to do with localization. And you can stop. So if you know what I'm talking about, so that's really, really, really very nice. if that's a priority for you, to have your application in multiple languages. Quick builds, hot reload. Who doesn't like hot reload? I mean, if in my normal day-to-day work, you build an app, and like we say, Android developers, we spend most of our time waiting for builds, isn't it? If you're an Android developer, I don't know, I'm not so much into iOS, but most of the time of an Android developer is waiting for a build. You hit build, you go to the coffee machine to get a coffee, and wait for your build to finish. And for those of us who work with very big applications, I mean, you have builds taking 20 minutes or 15 minutes. So if you add up that time, it really adds up. And if you are testing, you have to, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, but it's really very fast. And there are continuous integration platforms that are now beginning to support building Flutter. One I know of is called CodeMagic. So this is where we build our application. So you can see we have our app there, and it builds nightly or whatever we want to set up. So tools are coming, not yet as available as for native, but it's getting there. And then the other last thing, you can really build beautiful widgets in no time. Even if you're not so good at designing, there's a widget almost already built for everything. So it's a matter of you composing different widgets together and really come up with very beautiful UIs. So it's the end of fidgeting with Android XML views, trying to align the coordinator layout and stuff. It's really so easy with Flutter. And in our experience, we have had some issues. These are the problems we're having. API stability. I mean, the Flutter API is not very stable. It's getting really stable, but some APIs are still changing. Like if you are developing, for example, you leave your repository and you don't touch it for 2 weeks. You left it building, you come to build it. Sometimes it doesn't build anymore because some API has changed or something like that. So, but it's for the better. So there's some stability issues, but I think they are really reducing now. Integrating native components is quite cumbersome. There are people who have already a lot of code that they want to integrate their native workflows and stuff, but it's possible according to the Flutter documentation, but from my experience it's quite very tricky to integrate native views. Data persistence support is also quite lacking. I mean, it's kind of designed so much to be usable with Google's own cloud services, like Firebase. So if you want to use those kind of services, you really, it's easier, but many people want to have offline data and stuff. So there are some tools for SQLite with packages that have been built, but they don't have like really fast party support. So if you want to have some data persistence, you really need to put in some more time, but I hope there will be some tools coming on. And then the patterns, they are also still in infancy, especially for what he was talking about, state management. Some are going with Redux, many are using block as the default, but also it's not very precise and clear. So I think the patterns, the best practices are still emerging, but I hope this will be clear in the future, but right now I think it's not. Then one last that I didn't talk about here, tests. So if you're a QA engineer, test automation, most of the test platforms or whatever are not yet supporting Flutter. Like if you use Appium or some of those, Flutter is not well supported, but there is a a default that's built to support. So those are some of the issues we are having with Flutter. So you can weigh in, but I would really say that it's awesome and you should really take it on. I mean, the challenges can be fixed. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Next we have Alec from DAM.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, do we have? Perfect, there's me. Hi everyone, I'm Alec. You can find me on at Mr. Alec on Twitter. And I used to be heavily involved in the iOS developer community, as I've been an iOS developer for many, many years, since iOS 4. Organizing Copeds and Swift and Fika, the iOS conference here in Stockholm. But since March this year, I've been doing Flutter and with my own startup called DAM. Also on my spare time, I like to fly small planes. So this is a picture from when me and my buddy Eric was like touring around Sweden with our plane this summer, except he was doing a lot of sleeping. But anyway, so first a little bit about DAM. So we're an app where you get access to quality home contractors for your home projects, like plumbers, carpenters, electricians. And the unique thing about us is that we get you quotes through a video call, so that you can show like a plumber your plumbing and what needs to get done, and he can tell you to show specific things during the video call through the phone, so you can get an accurate quote without anybody having to come to your house, right, before you get a quote. So shameless plug, Flutter 300 discount code. If you use this and you have anything you need to get done at home, just download the app. Thank you for the phone screenshots. Thank you. Okay. So why did we choose Flutter? We're basically just a two-people team right now. It's me and my co-founder Malin, who's a business and marketing person. So I'm really the only developer, and we're working with just a few other people on a freelance basis, a few hours here and there. So for our app, we needed to be on both iOS and Android from day one, because we had both customers and also the plumbers and electricians, and we couldn't rely on one company with maybe 10 plumbers that everybody was going to use iOS or Android. So I tried React Native, I absolutely hated it. And then I tried Flutter and fell in love. So, a bit about the app. We've been live on the App Store and Play Store since May. We started building in March, so just 2 months. We had an MVP that we can actually launch. We've gone all in on Firebase. So we use Firebase authentication with SMS login. We use cloud functions for our backend. We use Firestore as our database, and Firestore also has a really great client-side library for handling data management, which I'll be showing later. And we have integrated the WebRTC for doing the video calls, and also on the iOS side, we've integrated with the native call kit. So we did our own plugin for that, so that instead of you getting just a push notification when somebody calls you, it actually integrates with the native call system, so it shows up as a real call with your regular ringtone and everything. So I'm going to show that in the demo. And we also built in a 2D minigame with a game library called Flame. I'm going to be showing that too. So, okay, let's look at a demo. I'm going to try to connect my phone here. Okay, let's hope nobody looked at my notes too closely. I have no idea what I had. All right, here's our app, done. So, first of all, like you have your home projects and stuff. You can communicate with your contractor with a chat, and all data is synced with Firebase Firestore. So what's really cool is that Let me see if I can. I have no idea what I'm seeing right here on the mirror. Okay, amazing. So for instance, you see my phone. Here's our back office, which is in React. And here's our database in Firestore. What's really cool is that everything is working with streams in real time. So I can change this last name. You see here John Appleseed. You see it in multiple places. Hi John, etc. Both on the app and in our back office. And if I change this to Flutter seed, boom, you see that it updates. Yeah, you don't see. Okay. Okay, you see it updated on my phone as well. So it's like, it's real time. You work with streams all the time, which is really great. You don't have to think about state management, which is awesome. Okay, so next thing I want to show is the call functionality. So if we go to my home screen, press call from my Android phone, you see that my phone is picking up the call, and this looks just like a regular native call. And then now we have a video call, which is really cool. And we plan to do a lot of fun stuff with this, like integrating AR. So like when you talk with your carpenter, hello, you can do like measurements in AR and stuff like that. That would be really cool. It's a future project. And also I wanted to show you this game we have. So here we built a thing which, you know, like in Sweden you have this tax deduction for construction work called ROT. And you can actually get like the data from the tax government about how much of these deductions you have left for a year and what kind of renovations you've done in the past. But since it takes so long time, we have a game you can play meanwhile. So some of you might recognize this from the Chrome, you have no internet thingy. Yeah, we're gonna add a high score and everything to this later on. So like, and this actually took me like, I found an open source project with just this game in an app. And it took me, yeah, now it wants to log into this yet. And it took me less than 2 hours to take out the dependencies from that game, just copy paste the code. It was an open source project, and make it a smaller widget, fit it into the screen, and now we have something that the user can do while they're waiting for the information to be fetched. Really cool, and it really shows the power of Flutter. Okay, let's get back to the presentation. Thank you. Okay, cool. So, some learnings. I'm going to try to be really quick. Stream Builder, awesome. It's going to be your new favorite widget. It basically lets you take a stream and then it rebuilds with the latest data from the stream every time. We use this everywhere together with Firestore to get those real-time updates, not have to worry about state. Awesome. Okay, second thing, actually, in my opinion, I think native plugins work really great. We built a few native plugins in our app and also been working on a few open source projects with native plugins. And as an iOS developer, I was able to jump right in and create an iOS plugin, although I have no Android experience. So doing something what we did with CallKit for Android would probably be a much heavier task. On the negative side, building and attaching to a device can still sometimes be a pain. We've had several build issues that come every now and then, especially when working with this thing called flavors. So you might, in the iOS world, be familiar with build configurations. Maybe you have one build which goes to your production APIs and one that goes to your development APIs. We tried doing this with flavors, but it seems that it's still pretty early for flavors because we had some issues with like Flutter and not building with the right settings in some circumstances when we're switching flavors back and forth. And embedding native views inside your Flutter app is still quite experimental. Like you can have, if you, for instance, want to integrate intercom, and that usually becomes like a screen which takes over your entire app, that's no problem. But if you want to include a native view in your widget tree, that is still experimental. So for instance, we wanted to embed the web view and have touch handling, which was a bit so-so still, but that's coming up. And all in all, the community is awesome. Working with the open source community of Flutter, it seems like people are very, very responsive, both on issues and pull requests. Everybody's in it to help. So that's amazing. Hot reload and hot restart is absolutely amazing. And I also recognize the feeling as an iOS developer having to wait 15-20 minutes for a build, especially when there's a new Xcode version out. And yeah, and using the declarative UI language, UI framework is also super great if you come from an imperative world. A tip, check out this site, fireship.io, if you want to do a Flutter app with Firebase. It's mostly focused on Firebase, but they have a great Flutter tutorial with tutorials about state management, looking at different state management paradigms, block, and inherited widget, and a few other ones. So yeah, that was pretty much it for my presentation. We're hiring. If you want to do full-time Flutter, let me know, or you can check out us on the hub. Yes, awesome. And yeah, I think we can take questions afterwards. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alec. We're just going to wrap this up. I have like 2 more slides, and then it's time to mingle. Okay, I'm going to mention the next meetup, which is on September 26th, and I have some notes so I don't forget anything here. If you haven't, which I think most of you haven't, because we have like 2 followers on Twitter, is you can follow us on Twitter. It's Flutter Sweden, one word. And if you have any suggestions or ideas, or if you want to present here, show your app, and things like that, get in touch with me, and we'll make it happen. Next meetup, we're going to talk a little bit about game development in Flutter, and that's actually what I worked with when I was at Google. I don't know how many of you saw the launch event, like in December. Some of you have seen it. Anyway, my demos were in there. So this is one of them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can do stuff like this with Flutter. After we wrap this up, we're going to have like 3 corners. So I know there are others that are also looking for developers here from Swifter. I don't know, are you here? There. And also, so Redmind looking for developers, and they also do investments. So like I'm sure there's probably some startup people here. So in that corner will be sort of a Redmind / find your investment / find your next Flutter job / find your next employee corner there. So if you're interested in any of that, go there. In that corner, Alec will be like getting started with Flutter if you have like any beginner questions, and I'll be here if you have any questions for me, if it's like maybe a little bit more advanced Flutter questions. I'm happy to help answer that if I can. All right, do we have Any questions? I can take like 2 questions here. We have one there.
Yes, I was thinking about in Flutter, you work with Flutter Group, right?
Yeah.
When did it start the work with Flutter? Because I was thinking about why choosing Dart.
So there's like a whole story of how that happened actually. So Flutter was started by 3 developers inside Google, and they used to be the sort of lead developers for Google Chrome. They actually wrote the first version of Google Chrome and then they stayed with it. And they were working on optimizing Google Chrome for mobile apps. And they realized like HTML is really slow. So what is it that makes HTML slow? It's like all this legacy, all the, the blink tags from... So they started pulling out the stuff that was slow and thought like, maybe we should replace the markup language. And then they were like, do we really need a markup language? That feels a little bit old. And then they started working with the Dart team also. So Dart is very much tailored for Flutter now. So I guess that's kind of how that happened. Those teams were in the same building, so maybe that's why. All right, any other? We have one question there.
Is it possible to build a 3D Flutter? Because it seems difficult with React.
Yeah, so questions 3D views with Flutter. I would say you can do super simple 3D, but yeah, no. Not yet, anyway. I'm sure that's something that they're thinking of and trying to figure out. But Skia can do some 3D more than Flutter, so you can do like 3D transformations and stuff, but you can't really put any 3D objects in there. Right. Okay, so yeah, let's get to know each other, and feel free to come ask me anything afterwards. Thank you all for coming.